Hi everybody. My presentation is going to be on Simon Bolivar. He is known as the Liberator, and I want to give you a little bit of background information on him. He was born in July 24th, 1783 in Caracas, Venezuela. He was raised by his uncle. His parents died while he was a young boy, and he was raised by his uncle. And his uncle, who was a student of John Jacques Rousseau, actually taught him a liberalist way of thinking. So he had that teaching early on. When he was a teenager, he moved to Europe, um, where he studied and he finished his schooling in Spain. And he went back home, and it was there, back in Venezuela, where he decided that he wanted to start his political campaign. In 1807, Bolivar returned to Venezuela to start his campaign, and it just so happened at the same time Napoleon had tried to seize Spain. So this left the Spanish colonies under their own control, and they began to form what are called juntas, which are committees that rally together and make decisions on behalf of the king. Um, It was during this time that Bolivar began to speak in several of the committee meetings and just start to voice his opinion about how he felt we should start to rally together and liberate the country. It was a perfect environment to promote his cause and to sever ties from Spain. That actually ended up working in his favor, and in April 1810, the governor was expelled from Venezuela and the junta took over. And during various meetings where they were actually going to conspire and rally for their liberation, um, Bolivar traveled to London to try to gain support from London for armies and arms, and he was unsuccessful. But while he was there, he met with um, Francisco de Miranda, who was currently staying there. He had been exiled from Venezuela for actually trying to liberate the country on his own. So he convinced Miranda to come back and support the cause. In 1811, Venezuela was declared independent, and Miranda was named the commander in chief. So Bolivar joined the army of the Young Republic, and Miranda gave him charge of the Puerto Cabaro. And this port was an important trade post in Venezuela, and he was given control of that post. While he was on charge of that post, one of his soldiers committed an act of treason, and Spain was able to seize that port. And that ended up causing Miranda to have to sign an armistice agreement with Spain, which pretty much left the country under complete control of Spain. Bolivar was not happy with this decision, and Bolivar and a few conspirators actually kept Miranda from fleeing the country, and Spain was able to capture him, and they imprisoned him. During that time, Bolivar ended up fleeing. Hi everybody, I'm doing my presentation on Simon Bolivar, who was the statesman and soldier and president and dictator of Gran Colombia in Peru. He was born in July 24th, 1783, and some of his accolades again. He was the president of Gran Colombia from 1819 to 1830, and the dictator of Peru from 1823 to 1826. Bolivar was from Caracas, Venezuela, and when he was a young boy, both his parents died, so he lived with his uncle, Simon Rodriguez. While he was living with him, Rodriguez got him some of the best tutors, and he had a very good education. And part of his studies was about Jean Jacques Rousseau, and he was introduced to a liberal way of thinking. As a teenager, he was sent to live in Europe, and he stayed in Spain for 3 years. And he came back home to Caracas after his studies, where he decided that he was going to take up politics. Um, he went back in 1804 to Europe, specifically to Paris, to study some of the teachings of John Locke, Montesquieu, Voltaire, and Rousseau. Um, Voltaire was the philosopher who stuck with him the most and where most of his teachings are inspired from. Voltaire was a crusader against tyranny, bigotry, and cruelty amongst people. When Bolivar decided to take up his campaign in politics, he returned home to Venezuela in 1807 and decided to explore the eastern cities of America on his way. And that's what started his independence movement. Um, in the Spanish no, Civil War ended up breaking out in Venezuela under Bolivar's rule, and the Spanish took the opportunity to seize back the land with llaneros for cowboys that they converted into cavalry. So Bolivar fled to New Granada, and while he was there, he was commissioned to remove a refraction route from Bogota, which is now Colombia, current city in Colombia, and try to also claim Cartagena to be able to combine forces. He wasn't able to seize that city, so they were able to join forces. So he fled to Jamaica. Um, After several years of trying to rally in Jamaica, the Bolivar decided to attack Grenada in August 6th of 1819. And in the Battle of Boyaca, he was successful. And 3 days later, he entered Bogota. And in December 1819, he was made the president and military dictator of New Grenada. After liberation of New Grenada, he met with another liberator, Jose San Martin, who was dubbed the Liberator of the South, and they met to try to free up the country of which is now Peru. During that meeting, they decided that Bolivar should lead the recruit for siege of the country. And so he led, and he had a trusted chief of staff, Jose Sucre. And in the Battle of Junin, they won the battle in Peru, and the Battle of Ayacucho, where the Spanish finally surrendered the country of Peru. So Bolivar was now the president of Gran Colombia and Peru, and he sent Sucre to acquire a northern piece of land that was still possessed by the Royalists, and Sucre succeeded. That little piece of land actually ended up naming themselves Bolivia after Bolivar. So the country of Bolivia, fun fact, was actually named after Simon Bolivar. Throughout his career, he published many documents, including La Carta de Jamaica, which is Letter from Jamaica, and El Manifesto de Cartagena. He also assembled the League of Hispanic Americans, and he advocated treaties for republics of Colombia, Peru, Mexico, and the United Provinces of Central America, just to name a few. Bolivar's whole thought process was unity amongst the continents. And some of the problems he had in his later career was that a lot of the countries, as they were being liberated, wanted to function as individual nation states. And it kind of conflicted with Bolivar's ideals. And this ended up leading to a lot of civil wars because of discrepancies over his documents and his treaties because they were set to unify the country as a whole, the continent as a whole, and not just individual states or countries. Um, this led to a big civil war between New Granada and Venezuela. So at the time, Bolivar was in Peru, and he left Peru to try to keep the peace between Venezuela and New Granada. Well, while he was there, his attempts were blocked by new liberals who didn't agree with his treaties and previous constitutions. And even some liberal factions even tried to take several attempts on his life. So he decided that he wanted to flee to Europe. And while he was on his route to Europe, he discovered that Sucre, his trusted general, was actually assassinated. Um, he ended up retreating to Santa Marta, where in 1830 he dies from tuberculosis. So the biggest thing that I learned in researching Simon Bolivar was that his way of thinking was to unify and free the Hispanic colonies, of which he did, and he wanted to create a league and a union where um, the individual free countries would be able to come together, which he was able to do. His way of thinking was kind of outdated by the new liberals' ideas and the thoughts of wanting to be individual functioning countries versus the continent as a whole. But overall, he will always be remained as the liberator of the countries, and he has various statues and a country named after him. So, provided I have pictures, and I hope you all enjoyed my presentation.